Okay, well, we now have a quorum of the advisory board so that we can begin our meeting. And for the record, we have three individuals who were not able to make it. Liam Gogan, Ben Reed, and Ryan Crockett absent this evening. We needed to wait this long to make sure that we had all four people that we needed for a quorum. And Katie is online with us, and we have Katie, for your benefit, we have four people in the room with us.
Awesome, thank you.
So introductions, I've just covered who's here and not here from the board
Mhm.
standpoint. We have our board objectives and operating guidelines. The next thing on number 2 talks about Civitas to present a timeline associated with
Mhm.
efforts. So if you could take us through the updated timeline based on the last feedback we gave you while you were out, that would be great.
Yes, of course. Can you guys see my screen?
Yes.
Yeah. Okay, great. So I like to start off each meeting just to kind of talk about the timeline, where we're at, where we've kind of been, and then also our next steps. So Rick, you mentioned to me that you guys wanted to possibly start or aim to start the petition drive mid-June. So right now, we started the project back in March. Got all the necessary data that we needed, um, ongoing stakeholder outreach, education, and consensus building will happen now until we go to the hearing process, and honestly, we'll continue on until the end of the project. We have drafted that service plan previously, and then also did that initial draft of the management district plan. So we're currently waiting for some feedback, possible changes. So nothing is finalized on the management district plan yet. And then once that plan is approved, we would submit it to county staff, which I believe Rick will work with Trent to get that reviewed and approved and make sure everything's good on the county side. And then hopefully aim for mid-June to start the petition drive. Any questions so far? No?
Any
Great.
questions from the
Okay.
board? No? Okay.
Great. And then I aimed to submit petitions by July, maybe end of July, depending on when county staff needs the petitions. Typically, we see about 2 weeks before the first resolution of intention of the first hearing, just so the petitions are verified, everything looks good on their end. So I'm aiming for July and possibly having that first Board of Supervisors meeting for the resolution of intention end of July, send out the mail notice the day after the ROI, and then plan to have the public meeting in August, which is the second hearing, and then the public hearing in September, which will be the last hearing to adopt the resolution of formation. And then I remember a few meetings ago, we decided that we probably like the start date for the district to be January 1 of 2026. So that's when the business begin paying into the assessment. So that's the timeline so far. Any questions? The timeline does, move as we progress through the project, but right now this is what I'm projecting.
Okay. Any questions from the board? Okay.
Okay,
Thank you, Katie.
great. Yeah, of
Next,
course.
to discuss the outreach progress. And
Mhm.
so this is a great opportunity for us. Um, Kind of the only time that we can collectively talk about how things are going with our public outreach, or not public, but the outreach to the local lodging business owners. And I know that the ad hoc committee has an opportunity to discuss things in between, but as a full board, this is the time. So I guess we can just go and kind of go around the short table and hear either from your most recent ad hoc meeting or just your specific district, what kind of feedback you have from the polling, if you will, that's being done so far.
Everyone's looking at me. I'm Dana Steinhauser. So District 1 or 4, we'll go for 4. The no calls no callbacks. I had sent out some material and then I followed up with an email. I'm kind of thinking, well, I'll follow up with another phone call or a phone call. I've called a few people. Um, but the folks I'm most concerned about are the ones that like Vacasa that has 7 different houses in Sawyer, Hawkins Bar, and maybe I should have sent them individually out. And then I was going to talk to a gal that is out of Trinidad that is in charge of that, and then revisit, the primaries around my area now that their season is. We've started with a paddle fest, and that was very busy, and now I can actually pin them down to spend some time and sit down if they have any questions. So that's on my agenda.
And so have you had any positives or negatives at all, or has it all just been you've sent out stuff and haven't heard back from anyone?
Right. I
So-
mostly, yeah, sent out stuff and have not heard back. So,
Okay.
that's it.
Okay.
Oh, a couple of were the wrong address, so they got sent back. Not wrong address, but just not home.
Okay, I'm Dana. I have spoke with a few people in my District 3 and otherwise. I spoke with John Hodges out of Weaverville, the Weaverville Victorian Inn. He's here. I and then I also spoke with Margot yesterday evening. She called me back, and at this point, it it seems like there's a major issue, a hurdle, roadblock, if you will, is distrust with the county and how that a lot, it seems like what has happened in the past is getting in the way of what could happen moving forward in the future. And I don't know how to bridge that divide and like heal that wound or whichever way you want to do it. I wasn't here for the original history, so I just have pieces of statements, and I am not an investigative reporter to get to the bottom of it. No pressure, Josh. And I understand that what it's like to not trust, period, and certainly the local government, and be told one thing and sold another. And I think, I don't know if I know the county is never gonna, just any time for liability's sake that there is a wrong, it's hard for government, local or otherwise, to take accountability and responsibility and apologize to the affected parties. So I don't expect Margaret to sign off on that. But there's a lot of distrust about how the original TOT money is allocated, I believe. I would love to know, I would love like a clear history and get it cleared up and have the chance of this passing. The only chance I'd see of this passing is if there's really faith from the businesses that the county's gonna not have any control or power over the funds. And then there's even the concern, like, maybe just, I don't know, like what if the effort is even possible? And I believe in the effort being possible, but I don't know about everybody else believing in it. So,
And thank you for that. And you say, I definitely understand how people can have that concern and lack of trust. I think in this instance, it's interesting because the county's only role is right now trying to facilitate a process that gives the lodging business owners their opportunity to decide whether they want to do it or not, how much money and who's on the board. And after that, the only role is to collect the money and has no say whatsoever in how it's spent. So it seems like if people are holding on to how TOT was positioned in the past and then how the TOT funds were used, that's different because of course the county did have control of those funds. Whereas in this case, they wouldn't. But that doesn't seem to matter.
You know, I think that it goes, I, I think that it's really hard to turn a page with a clean slate and act like the past didn't
Sure.
happen. Like people are affected, they're impacted, there's, it, you know, I don't know what to say. It was brought up like more education, but people have to be willing, have to, in order to learn something, you have to be willing. And in order to learn, you have to trust.
Okay.
So
Okay.
I
Well,
don't
and
know if
I
it's
w-
time for you to be able to speak.
I will be,
In response, yeah.
yeah.
I have a letter here from her from 2009, and
Can you
she,
use your microphone, please?
oh, sorry. I have a letter here from 2009, and she did in 65 say that it was 4%, in 72 it was raised to 5%. Then some of the funds were diverted to the, other things in tourism as that was originally that those TOT funds were originally for tourism. And then in 1990, the bed tax was raised illegally without a vote to 8%. And when they protested, it stayed in effect until 96. And then there was a vote to raise it to 10, and that was put down. And then it went back to the 5%. So that might be the history
I
she's
think,
talking about.
and as I understand it, is the original 5%. The claim that I heard was that it was past earmarked, which means 2/3, which means if it's earmarked, that's where the funds go, and it was earmarked for tourism. And I wasn't in Trinity County when that happened, so I don't know. I would be really interested to know, genuinely. And the
Yeah, okay.
so if the county, if there was a ballot initiative that was earmarked and it passed by 66+%, it must have, if it must have passed, if it's 50% or 66%, because it is a tax. And if it was passed and earmarked for specific things, and then that's not being implemented, I don't know how it has gone on so long. The other thing that could have happened is it was earmarked or blah, 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 but I don't believe that it doesn't seem to be implemented like it is. So say it passed, but as it was promised and put on the ballot, people made promises. And whoever was on, sitting on the panel as supervisors at the time made promises. But as we know, promises don't keep. And seats shift and blah, 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 blah. So if it's not earmarked, if it's not designated when it passes,
Right.
but that also doesn't mean that people don't feel screwed over.
Understand.
So I don't know. And like, I don't know how to resolve it because, it's not mine to resolve. I'm on the outside and an empathetic
Mhm.
person. But I don't know how to fix it. I have, but a deep, rich history with the county in all sorts of other ways, personally.
Sure.
Yeah.
Okay. Well, and I'll be happy to reach out to Margot just for what it's worth to give a more formal county view of the current situation. Again, I wasn't here for the history of the others either.
Right.
I can only speak to how this is working, how it's different than anything that's been done in the past, that kind of a thing. But it is, it is what it is, and I appreciate you sharing that and her being willing to share her views of why or why not. So that's helpful.
Yeah.
Anything else?
John Hodges, when we spoke, was concerned about, let me reference it because it was a page number, and a page number doesn't do any good. It's the first attachment, I believe, because it's like page 1920, but it's the appendix 1, the law is, if I have that right, is how the legislative findings and declarations, where it goes into, his concern is that in this piece is what I didn't get specifics, but he said, look at this, and I did look at it, and what my takeaway is, this is how there's the crossover into where the county makes I think the concern is that the county's gonna take the money. And I don't know exactly how that isn't my understanding, but that is a concern that has been raised. And if it's possible to get laid out, like exactly, like go through the document and us go through section by section to clear it up, I think it's worth the time. And I don't know if that's something that maybe the ad hoc needs to make time for to do,
Yeah.
which we can attempt to do that. Because because ultimately, the concern is that the money will be collected and used by the county in ways that are not what the hotelier or the lodging
Right.
owners would want.
Yeah, which
That's one of the
which
issues.
Katie can address.
Yes.
But the bottom line is it can't happen. But I
Mhm.
understand
Yeah,
it still
yeah.
can be the concern, and it can still be a perception of things. So we can dig in on that a little bit more. You can let Katie address that.
And then,
Yeah, definitely.
yeah, and then it was brought up of, why other businesses weren't assessed. And the reason is time, money, but in my opinion, as a business owner in Trinity County, if you have to remit your sales, then every business would have to remit its sales to the county. And if you're already concerned about the government, the whatever threat in distrust, that's just another thing you'll have to do. The TOT is already a mechanism, so it's easier to use that mechanism for the T-bid assessment. And then the other alternative raise, which I heard previously when I've worked on attempts to adjust the TOT tax, is just to make a 0.5% Trinity County-wide tax. But again, if that wasn't earmarked and if it passed by 50% plus one, that would just go into the general fund, which is what people don't want anyway. So if there, and like the chance of a tax passing at 66+% as earmarked seems highly unlikely. And yeah, so.
Okay.
Anyhow.
And any feedback from others besides these two?
Yeah, I've had others totally in support that email me back because I emailed everyone in District 3 and some in District 5 and then reached out to some in other districts, not everybody, but I got more, I got 4 no's. I got 4 no's and like solidly 6 yeses. Yeah.
Could you give us a profile of the yeses? I mean, were they needing exposure, help needing?
I think some people are just, the people that said yes are happy to see a joint effort towards, you know, an intentional effort to increase business and cash revenue into the county is what it seems like. They encourage tourism.
Okay. Thank you.
Yeah.
Katie, we'll come back to asking for some feedback about some of these things. I just want to get all the feedback first, and then we can dig in a little
Okay,
bit.
yeah, no problem.
So, Leah.
Since the last meeting, it's been a little quiet communicating with some people. I've had some smaller people be in full support, and then Dana's helping me reach out to a couple other businesses in my district. That's it.
So, it sounds like you've had some in favor. Have you have some opposed as well, or just silence more from others?
There's been yeah, there was a couple no's, but they were like some of the Airbnb owners in a smaller scale, but some of the more of the resorts were in favor of it.
Okay. Okay, so we will have here shortly public comment that we can gather additional input and respond to, but for now, I think Katie coming back to some of this. First, I will say, tomorrow on the Board of Supervisors agenda, CAO Trent Tuthill will be actually leading a presentation about alternative funding sources for the county. And this is not about tourism, it is about actually running the county with enough money. And so he will be, I did see in the slides that are attached to the agenda, there is some history of efforts that have been in the past for TOT attempts and some of those things. So we'll get a little bit of a history lesson.
Mhm.
This is the second time I've heard about this illegal tax thing that I'm not at all familiar with, so I'll ask some more about that tomorrow during the board meeting and see what people have to say. But what he's putting forward is, again, not tourism focused. It's saying at some point, we're either going to be cutting services or collecting more revenues, one of the two. And so here's ways that we could go about it. And one of the things that he's going to highlight is that if the public brings forward an initiative, even if it specifies how the money will be spent, which usually means you have to get a 66% vote, it doesn't if the public brought it forward. It
Oh,
only
right.
takes the 50% plus one.
Mm.
And
I have heard that.
so that would mean if the public went out and got enough petition signatures that they could get something on the ballot for a tax initiative, then it would only require the 50% plus one, which of course increases the likelihood, and potentially specifying how it would be used increases the likelihood. But that's just at a bigger picture level. And the reason I mention it in part is because he will have, I saw the history there of some information about previous attempts at increasing taxes, whether it was TOT or not. And of course, most of what it says is they failed, they failed, they failed. And that's kind of the history of tax initiatives here. So
Well, the
that's one
one's
piece.
passed.
Pardon me?
One has passed.
Yeah, but all the ones since then have not. So then, well, there have been some since, there you go.
That's what I mean.
There you go. I think you're referring to the cannabis tax.
Yes.
Yeah,
I am.
that's true.
That the
Um,
cannabis industry wrote themselves and assessed themselves
Yeah.
because they, yeah,
Yeah.
it was a very hard call, but it was, yeah.
Yeah.
It was up against a lesser of two evils, I always say.
Okay, so then the issue about some aspect of the documentation potentially leaving a loophole that would allow the county to take control of the funds. Katie, based on just that general piece of information, again, we may get more in public comment, but is there anything that you want to say about that?
Yeah, definitely. So, as you may know, the funds that are generated through the assessment of the district to those lodging providers, those funds cannot be directed or diverted to government programs. So, TBID assessment dollars must fund services and improvements that specifically benefit the lodging businesses that pay into the TBID. So that's mandated by Prop 26. So I can kind of talk about Prop 26 a little bit, but it requires that all the assessment funds be used on programs that provide a specific benefit to the hotels or lodging providers that is not provided to those not charged the assessment. So that's why it gets into the fact that these funds cannot be diverted to government programs because that could also benefit those who are not paying the assessment, if that makes sense. Any other questions
Are
in
there some
regards to?
crossovers? Are there not, are there not some crossovers between countywide programs and lodging?
Wait, I'm sorry.
I'm not
Well,
sure.
the voucher system?
Are you
That's
trying
not-
to, come
I'm-
up with some example of where the county could say, well, this is for the lodging benefit, and so we can take
I don't
control of it?
know. I don't know what I was trying to do. I was
Okay.
just saying, you're saying Prop 26,
Mhm.
I said, it's kind of like a double entendre. You're saying that, well, no, the monies could not be diverted because the hotel lodging providers, could, are not considered government, have an affiliation with government programs. But I just wondered, what first came up to, in my mind is that, yeah, there are some government programs for the mentally ill and,
But not in this case of where the funds That's separate.
Okay.
Yeah, I think the biggest distinction here, and again, coming back to some of the history of this is however TOTs were handled in the past, because I wasn't here for that. If, if the, if the TOT was implemented with the 50% vote, that meant it went to general purpose. It wasn't specifically by by the words of the agreement dedicated to any one thing. So that must have been the way it is, because that's how that TOT is.
I would assume,
collected
yeah,
now.
it goes into the general fund.
Yeah, and if it had been specifically, it would be allocated this way, then it would have been the 66% vote. And so, again, I don't know what people said, but I always, even when I'm negotiating contracts in business, it's like, it doesn't matter what you and I say to each other. What matters is what's in the contract, because someday you and I will both be gone, and the contract is what will be there in place to make sure what happens. And in this case, the contract, if you will, is the money is collected by the county because they're collecting TOT. They pass it through to the nonprofit. The nonprofit is led by the board assigned by the people who voted for this by petition, and they are the only ones who can control how it's spent, period. So the county has no opportunity to do anything with that money. But again, I understand that people can have different perspectives about that. But that is the facts.
And
And,
those that did not vote for it did not, do not get advertising?
No, if you, whether you sign the petition for it or not, if it gets enough signatures on the petition,
Right.
everyone pays in and everyone theoretically benefits. Again, it's up to the board as to how that money gets spent,
The nonprofit board,
the nonprofit
Oh.
board. Thank you.
made up of the assessed businesses.
Right.
Okay.
Okay, and, yeah, so, but I will do some more homework on this. 8% was illegally in place for a couple of years, because I just, doesn't even seem possible, but I'll just find out.
1996.
1990 to 96.
Yeah,
All right,
but that, I'm not even sure the story on that, but it's no longer happening. So like, maybe it was happening, like. It went up to 8, but it was illegal, like, yeah, I guess I shouldn't be talking, sorry.
Yeah.
Thanks.
Well,
No, and that seems crazy. I know that seems crazy, but I absolutely believe that. How things were ran then and how
things are happening right now.
things are happening. Yeah, like it's believable to me completely
Yeah.
that was happening.
Yeah,
That doesn't sound crazy.
Yeah,
That sounds messed up and it sounds trust breaking.
yeah.
And it
okay.
sounds like exactly why people have negative faith in working in tandem with the county in any capacity. Like,
Yeah.
I get that.
Okay.
Okay.
All right, thank you.
Yeah.
Okay, so for now, we're gonna go to public comment, and for those in the room, since we still only have us online, this is for something that's not in the 4 buckets that we're gonna cover afterwards. So first one is nonprofit corporation formation. The next is the plan, the actual management district plan, approving the minutes, and the next meeting. So those things will have their own public comment. So this would be for things that aren't part of that, but still associated with what we're doing here. So it could be on the things that we were just talking about. It could be on something else associated with the program that we just don't have coming up on the agenda. So at this point, I'll open it up to general public comment. And I'll get the timer going for our 3 minutes.
Okay. Well, conversation with Dana, is it Dana? Yeah, Dana. And because I got the new revision, new draft. And I asked her, they're not numbered when you print them. It's weird. It's on the computer, they're numbered, but so I said, just look at page 19 and 20 or 36610 under improvements. You guys, we're on the same page?
Yeah.
Okay.
That's Appendix 1, sorry for reference. I
Okay.
shouldn't be-
So when I started reading this, and it clearly states in the 36609 to, the city council is the board of supervisors. It clearly states that anytime you see city council in a statement, it means it refers to the board of supervisors. You see that one?
That was one of my
Under
questions.
Okay.
definition.
So as I started reading this, and you talk about non-trust and the TOT not being spent, thanks, well, it was David Hammer, who was the city or city council or whatever. County council at the time, he found the loophole. But when you talk about the trust, like Margot was, in the 2016 version, they promised to build boat ramps out of Trinity Lake with that money. Right here in the document that I have, 2016. Then in this, on page 19, page 20, where it breaks it down, what these improvements that would benefit, that they could consider benefiting the motels or, you know, the assessed or stakeholders or whatever you want to call them. And they have a list of these things that they can spend this on in the estimated 5 years, which would include parking facilities, benches, booths, kiosks, display cases, pedestrian shelters and signs, trash receptacles, public restrooms, lighting, heating facilities, decorations, parks, fountains, planting areas, next page, closing and opening, widening or narrowing existing streets, facilities or equipment or both to enhance the security of persons' property within the district, ramps, sidewalks, plazas, pedestrian malls, rehabilitation or removal of existing structures. They could put that, they could earmark that money that's being collected to do all these things. Well, it's benefiting the community and in that it benefits the assessed. Nothing is said in there, and reading this document, it doesn't specify that, hey, we need some advertising here. We need to get people into Trinity County. Fixing or closing a road or putting up a new park bench isn't going to do it, but it would alleviate these costs and the infrastructure. It talks about infrastructure, meaning roads, sidewalks, things like that, that the county doesn't have the money to do on its own. And what this document, as I'm reading through this, all this looks like to me and to the other folks, I get more calls because of,
At 3 minutes and 40 seconds, so I'll give you 20 more seconds just to wrap up.
just needed some more clarification. If this isn't what the money is earmarked for, then why is it in the draft? Why is it in the document? Why are you suggesting that we pay for all these things? That's,
Okay,
Do you wanna
I think,
to address-
actually, let's see what other comments we have and try to answer all the questions at one time. Any other public comment in the room? Okay, well then, yes. So let's, did you have a response to that, or? I'm happy to, and
Yeah,
Lee, I'm sure
I
can.
mean, I guess I'll start. So following just kind of along of what mentioning is under the law part is the definitions. So it's just defining what those areas would be. But when you go up on the pages, we do talk, because the service plan has to follow the law. And so that's the law. But in the before pages is our actual service plan. So when we talk about marketing, getting people here, under the sales and marketing page 11 and 12, we talk about some of the sales and marketing and the efforts of the increasing awareness, and that's with the ads, television, radio, lead generation and stuff like that. So those are some of the areas where we are trying to highlight the marketing. I know it's kind of confusing with the law, like mentioning those informations, but it's kind of just talking about more of the definitions in your area, if that makes
So what you're saying is page 21, like 36610 for improvements is just defining what improvements are.
Yeah, and that's of the law, but that's not what we said. That's what the law is put together. We
Right.
have under, uh, I mean, just highlighting especially to that, the marketing side, page 11 and 12 is what we have written that we can change.
So Katie, can you help clarify the Article 1, like the Chapter 1, it's Appendix 1, it's the law. And then under that, it's these sections and everything under, it's like everything with a number is in an article, in a chapter, in the appendix. And the appendix is the law. These are declarations first. And then if you scroll down, then it goes to definitions. Article 2, which starts with 36606, is definitions. Activities, it defines activities. It defines assessment, it defines business, it defines city, it defines city council, it defines clerk, general benefit, defines improvement. Am I getting that right?
Yes,
Okay.
you're completely right. And
Okay.
Leah, you're completely right. The what was referred to in section 36610 is just a definition of improvement. And it says, it's including but not limited to. So that's what these are just examples of what improvements can be. And whatever's in the plan is the services that you can provide within your specific district. So these are just examples and definitions of what improvement means in regards to this law.
It
Um,
doesn't mean that the county can take the money and then cover these certain things that is a
Correct.
burden. I think what it is like, then if the county can spend money on things that tourism causes a burden on them, then they can then justify and spend that money for. Is there any sort of writing in here allowing the county to spend the money in any way?
No, there's no way that the funds can be diverted to the government for them to spend the money in any way. If you can see in section 5, assessment budget and services, as Leo was talking about the service plan, whatever is in this section is what is going to be covered, whether it's changed or not, is what's going to be the services provided to the lodging businesses. The law is just stating what the definition of improvement is and giving examples of what improvements could be, but is not limited to.
So the service plan is what's approved, and then the nonprofit board has to stick to the service plan.
Correct, yeah, and then,
Okay.
yes, yeah.
And then the county gets to keep a percentage of money for basically being the tax collector on it, which is at this point in this draft. Can you tell me what percentage that is, please?
It's 2% right now in this draft.
Yeah, but it is there. We're gonna have it. I haven't been invited to that meeting. Did you get a meeting with Terry McBrayer?
Terry hasn't responded to me yet, so once I,
Didn't we talk about it last meeting about needing to have, she thinks that's too low, $4,000, estimated to $4,000 is too low for assessing.
Trent, yeah, was mentioning
You were
that.
on that meeting
I had the
too.
conversation with Trent. I don't know of any
Mhm.
request for a follow-up meeting.
Oh, okay.
But
Yeah.
Trent basically said that.
Oh, that was
based
in our
on-
ad hoc. I
Based on
apologize.
their,
Mhm.
yeah, it might have been the ad hoc, based on their experience of collecting TOT and now introducing a completely new thing that you're gonna have to collect from people, that it was extremely unlikely that 2% would cover the cost. And so
Gotcha.
therefore, he was recommending 3 or 4%.
Right,
So right
okay.
now, it still says 2%. We would have to
Mhm.
decide if we were gonna try to put forward the 3 or 4%. But it's basically to cover the costs of doing that collection. And I think we did discuss in the last meeting of this full group that there is absolutely no way that the nonprofit board could get that money collected for
Any
less
other
than
way.
4%.
Yeah,
There's absolutely no way.
yeah.
And so it would still be a great deal, and we would just have to work through that if that's appropriate.
Okay.
But yeah, I do want to, we've talked about this in a couple of different meetings, but the ad hoc group came to this full advisory board with a recommendation on what they thought we should put forward about how the money could be spent. And that included separating it out into 4 buckets, as I recall. And the reason that has to be done, because you have to say how it could be spent. Because if you don't list those things, then you can't use it for that purpose. If you list them, you don't have to spend it on everything that's listed.
Mhm.
And so things like event stuff, it could be
It's
that
inclusive.
somebody says, the, the Grange events are a huge factor. We'll bring in a lot more people if we just had a ramp for ADA accessibility. Actually, I think there already is one. And so we as the nonprofit board think it would be worth doing that. Or we think that
Right.
providing some new facility for some
Public restrooms
amphitheater
would be
or
great.
whatever. But that again would be the nonprofit board. The board of supervisors, the county government has no say in how that money gets invested.
Okay.
And then the thing that we were running up against was, once we kind of came up with those 4 categories, that was the stuff like John was mentioning about advertising and promotion and so forth. And then there was event type stuff, and there was signage and, examples of things. Then we had to say, well, in the first year, how would we at least propose to the lodging business owners that the initial year's funds be allocated, because you have to do that.
Mm-hmm.
But then we also talked about that there is the ability for that nonprofit board to move things. I think it was 15% in the first
Mhm.
year, and then in the next year, they can reallocate the
Not
whole
in the first year.
in the next year, at
Sec-
after the end of the first year. In the first year, they can
Mhm.
change it by 15%.
I thought you couldn't change it the first year.
You can only change it after the first year.
After the
So
first year.
beginning second year, you can change, you
Then
can
you
do
can
the
change it.
15%.
The first year's like
Mhm.
collecting the funds anyways. Like there's no money
Mhm.
even to
Okay.
do anything
So
with.
within that first year, nothing can be
Nothing can
changed.
change.
Mhm.
Okay, I thought you could still move it around a little bit in
Mm-mm.
those, but the next year you could rechange it however you want. So what you're saying is, in the second year,
Mm-hmm.
you can change, but you can still only change at that point by 15%.
15%. Mm-hmm.
Mhm.
Okay, so again, this was why in our polling, when we're going over this material with people, we wanted to be able to say, okay, how do you feel about this? Would you think that the allocation should be something different? Because we're just trying to pull together the document that you would then sign up for or not sign up for via the petition. So there's still now, before we go to petition, time to change that. We could say, hey, it's all marketing. We want to allocate all the money to the marketing. Even though we have 4 categories, we want all the money to go to advertising in the first year. It doesn't matter. It could be whatever the lodging business owners would want it to be. And then after that, then in the second year, the nonprofit could shift things around. But again, it'd be important to note, but they can only shift 15%. So if you said 100% is going to advertising in year 1, that means you can only take 15% of that 100% and move it to something else the next year. That's what you're telling me. So starting off with a distribution across those categories is important, but again, we're just here trying to facilitate, not trying to dictate. So we just need the input from people when they're saying to the extent they support it or would support it, well, what would you like these distributions to be? And John, I'm sorry, we can't have. You haven't even asked anybody that else. There's not, all the people are calling me. We can't have this open discussion in this meeting.
I can, so how the committee, our first task was to decide what businesses were even assessed. The committee wasn't specifically started to assess anyone specifically. Our first meeting was like, what businesses, how do we want to do this? How do we draw the district? Is it the whole county or is it, what shape is it? And then the pros and cons of what it would take to assess other businesses. And what it would take to assess other businesses is that it will take more time in the planning and development, which is more money out of the county's pocket. There's $30,000 spent. So it would be several more months. And then there's no mechanism to collect this sales receipts for local businesses. The county doesn't have any of that data. So then they'd have to create that. That'd have to be a whole new system. And if the goal And, and at that threshold of the time, the board here decided for sake of being able to get it to pass in a way that the county can afford to have the consultant, that we would attempt to assess the lodging businesses. Why that makes, it's easier to do that because there's already the TOT mechanism. That was the board's vote and choice. This committee is board by, I mean, we're not a board, we're a committee, whatever.
Advisory board.
Advisory board, thank you. Sorry.
Because
Yeah,
this
I
is
understand.
Not appropriate, and we should not be engaging.
Yeah, but
So-
it is like a history that I think could be stated in a way that, so we all understand.
Yeah,
I
And
have
not
just
talking
think,
directly
you
to
know, I
the,
think we've
Couple
heard,
questions too
we've-
about something, but to do with
I
page
guess the link.
14, when we get around to it, I think would be a good time.
okay. So I just want to say, we've had this conversation 3 times, and I'll be happy to have it again after this board meeting, but it is not appropriate to get into a dialogue in this meeting. That is for the ad hoc committee meetings or in one-on-one discussions. But this advisory board is here to facilitate this process. That facilitation included coming up with a proposed plan that then could be discussed with lodging business owners before it goes to petition. So yes, we could have started with, instead of us spending the 40+ hours we've spent working on this, we could have said to lodging business owners, do you want to come spend 40 hours working on this?
yeah.
We believed that this was the appropriate way, and just give them the opportunity before it goes to petition to say, we want this to be different. So there is every opportunity for the lodging business owners to weigh in and say what they want it to be if they think it should be different. And the fact that this advisory board did the homework to pull together a starting point, I think is of benefit to the people. And if, I understand that some people would not see it that way. Under action items, the next item is to review and approve the nonprofit corporation formation. So Katie, do you want to give us an update on where we are?
Yes, let me just pull up the timeline really quick. So I have it here. So we have not started drafting the initial articles of incorporation because I wanted to wait and see where we want to move forward. So right now there hasn't been too much movement, but I can work with the ad hoc committee if we want to move forward with drafting the articles of incorporation. If that is the case, I remember last time we talked about using the county's address. And then we just need to select a name of the individual that would like the corporate mail to go to. And these can all be changed at a later date to someone else or a different location. But to get the process started, we do need those 2 details for the articles of incorporation. So if you want me to move forward with using the county address, and then maybe Rick, if you want to use your name for now, and then we can change it to someone else, that would be on the board, we can do that for now. But it's totally up to how you guys want to do that.
Okay, well, I'm sorry I wasn't more clear in my notes, because yes, this group did ask that these bylaws and articles of incorporation be worked on
I
after
see.
the
Okay.
last meeting.
Mhm.
So I don't care if you use the county in my name.
Okay.
You can leave them blank for now, because that's not the important part of the bylaws and
Mhm.
the articles of incorporation. We just need to see the language and be able to have that to show to lodging business owners so that they feel comfortable and can even help us fill in the blanks with who they want and what address they want. So if you can work with the ad hoc committee to get us a draft for the next meeting, that would be great.
Yeah, that sounds awesome. So I'll do that. We'll have a draft of the articles of incorporation for the next meeting and also a starting draft for the bylaws, and I'll work with the ad hoc committee. We have a meeting this week, so we can do that.
Okay. Do you guys have any questions about the nonprofit corporation formation, the bylaws, articles of incorporation? Okay. Public comment about the nonprofit corporation formation? None. Yeah. If it's about the nonprofit corporation formation, yes.
So could I get a copy of those also sent to me?
The timeline.
Are you talking about the,
Yeah, what you're, bylaws, what you're gonna form,
When we have it, yes.
right? And talking about to form this thing, I still have lodging owners that contact me because of 2016 that still haven't been contacted. They don't even believe that this is really happening. But the ones that I've given the information to, they have the same thing. That's why, we're coming to the end of this. At the end of August, it's going to be $6,000 a month to continue this. You realize that? It's at the end of August. Is it the end of August or the end of July? 1,000 runs out.
Please continue.
I have a question.
This is not a question and answer. You have 3 minutes to make a public comment, and then we can choose to have a response.
July or the end of August, one of the two, the $30,000 runs out. And then it's $6,000 a month to continue this process with Civitas. Here we are at the 1st of June, and you haven't even contacted the lodging industry. The way this thing is supposed to have been started, the bylaws, like you said, getting back to the bylaws, is that we, as lodging owners or the assessed, get together, we put the money together, then we approach the Board of Supervisors, and then we start the process of forming a T-bid. That's how it starts. We already have, before anything gets started, before a dime is spent, we have already had 50% plus, or whatever it takes, to get this process started. Before starting the process or hiring Civitas, we already have the lodging industry in to start this process. You guys are doing it totally backwards. You've already determined what you're going to do, where the money's going to be spent. It can't be changed. Everybody was thinking, oh, you can change it. And finally, thank you, Katie, for specifying you can't change this. And during the duration of its life, you can only change it 15%. All these administration and advocacy, 40,000 a year. What are we going to do with that? We aren't hiring somebody to do this job. We're very capable of understanding where the money needs to go. Everything in this document, and we don't even have a final set of bylaws to actually look at. We don't have what the actual cost is. What's the county going to charge us to collect this money? There are other places that collect these kind of T-bid monies, and it doesn't have to be the county, and they're very competitive about it. And they have the same force, they have the same reckoning, they have the same ability to lien your property if it's not paid. That's it. All righty, thank you.
Any other public comment about the nonprofit corporation formation? Okay. Review and approve the draft management district plan. So Katie, you can take us through here, and Dana, this may
Yeah.
be where you had your questions, but Katie, we'll let you start.
Yeah, of course. I can start the management district plan really quick. So if we have questions, we can have it up on the screen. But from here on, the copy that we have, I was wondering if we want to move forward with the draft we have, or if we want to continue doing more outreach and consensus building and get more feedback. But if there's any changes to the management district plan, I guess now is the time to talk about it. So I leave it to the board if you guys have any changes you guys would like to make or have any questions.
Okay, does the board have any questions about the plan at this point?
I do.
Okay,
Page 14, there are several
Mhm.
places, 14, maybe 15.
Okay.
I guess under C, the first one was on page 14, but let's see, that would be reasonable cost. The statement, non-assessed lodging businesses will not receive these nor any other TCT BID funded services and benefits. I wanted to know what the non-assessed lodging businesses would be.
Those who are not being assessed, so those that will be assessed, there's a business list at the end in Appendix 2. So those are all the assessed lodging businesses, and everyone else would be considered non-assessed. So they wouldn't be charged the assessment.
Who
So-
is everyone else?
Yeah, I think you just need to provide clarity. How would a business end up on the non-assessed list?
If they are not defined as the lodging business owner, and then also if they are not within the district boundaries, which would be the county of Trinity, and then also this definition of what a lodging business is. So if the lodging provider or a business does not follow under this definition of lodging business on page, I believe will be page 8, then they would be considered a non-assessed business.
While we're on the topic, let's just leap to the same page, 14, the assessment, under D, under
Mhm.
assessment, paragraph 2, to
Mhm.
account at the bottom, to account for this benefit differential and to make sure the benefits are proportional. An assessment formula based on a percentage of revenue has been selected. The
Mhm.
proposed formula accurately reflects greater benefit to assessed lodging businesses with higher priced room nights. What does that mean?
So we decided there's two ways to have the assessment. You can either have it as a percentage, which is what we chose, at 3% of assessment, or some like to choose a fixed dollar amount. But since we chose to go through the percentage route, that's what the first sentence is referring to. And then the second sentence you referred to is that, say, there is a hotel as a room that's $100, but you have a different hotel that charges for the same room for $200. The assessed lodging businesses who have the higher priced room will pay more into the assessment, so they should receive more benefit. So the benefit should be proportional to what they're paying to the assessment. So if a lodging business pays more into the assessment, they'll benefit more from the services provided by the district.
So in developing a board, is that going to affect who's on the board then? Those who pay more into the assessment?
It should not affect to who's on the board unless that's how the bylaws are written. So as long as the bylaws aren't written in that way, then it should not affect the board makeup and who can be a part of the board.
And then another question on the very next page, 15, top of that page, still under assessment, was
Mhm.
the assessment shall not be considered revenue for calculation of TOT tax. So could you explain that again? How that,
So the T-bid is a separate assessment from transient occupancy tax. So it should not be seen in calculations for transient occupancy taxes because they're not the same as mechanism, the
So
funding mechanism.
if my bill was $100 before the assessment, and now it would be 103, what this is saying is I would still have TOT calculated on $100, not 103.
Mhm.
And vice
Correct.
versa.
Right.
Yeah.
Okay.
Mhm.
right.
Great. Any other questions?
Back on the last one, Katie, when you're talking about the assessment, that's just talking
Yes.
about the weighted vote of for the assessment. Is that what that's explaining?
Yes, and it's also explaining how the lodging businesses will benefit being in the district. So, like I was saying, if say a lodging business pays $10,000 into assessment, but a different one pays only 2,000, the lodging business who pays 10,000 should proportionally get the same benefit compared to the other business who pays less. So essentially, they'll be getting more benefit than those pay less than them.
Is there a formula?
There's no formula, but that is how this law is set up. So it should be proportional to how much the lodging business is paying into the assessment. their benefit.
And I guess the final question would be,
Mhm.
if you're not through,
No, I'm
just wherever you see city council,
Mhm.
why would we have city council if it's the board of supervisors for Trinity County?
So that was referring to back in the law. So we sometimes only
Commissions.
work with cities. So we'd only work with city councils, so they're kind of interchangeable. So we either work with the board of supervisors or we work with the city council.
But since Trinity County has no city
council.
councils, is there
Mhm.
reason why this can't be changed to Board of Supervisors?
I don't think it's in the
Um,
service plan though. I think it's
it's,
just,
yeah, it shouldn't be in the service plan.
Okay,
I haven't
It's
seen.
only mentioned in the law.
okay.
Yeah.
So it's just referencing the law and
Mhm.
And that's, then the definitions, that's addressed in the definitions in appendix.
Yes.
C.
Mhm.
And I think, Katie, the only thing I want to be clear about here is,
Mhm.
you've said a couple times something that I think would be very, very, very difficult to measure and or administer. When you
Mhm.
say that the proportion of benefit should be equal to the proportion of assessment collected and passed through.
Mhm.
So
Yeah.
I have no idea how an entity figures that out. You know, if you're saying you're going to use the money to promote events that bring tourism, you're going to use the money to advertise to bring tourism,
Mhm.
there's no way that you know how that business is going to end up heads in beds in the various participants of the program. So
Mhm.
help me understand how this is meant to be applied. So it
Yeah, that's a,
sounds lovely in concept and,
Mhm.
and completely impractical.
yeah,
Especially if
that
you don't
that
know their
to-
weight.
yeah, that
Well,
totally makes
go
sense.
ahead. Yeah.
But for us as Civitas, we only work with like destinations or districts for their formation or renewals. So sometimes when we leave them after they formed or renewed, we don't get to see what actually takes to, run the district and their day-to-day services and what their day-to-day function is. So I can't answer that question right now, but I can do a lot of research until the next board meeting and see if I can talk with some districts I've formed recently um, to see if they have any advice and how they figure that out. And then I can present that at the next board meeting if that works for everyone.
Uh, yeah,
Yeah,
because
that sounds good to me. Yeah, I think we need to look at that. a
and
little bit more.
maybe you can bring reference to what some
Yeah,
other organization has done to somehow make that a reality, because again,
yeah,
it
definitely.
seems virtually impossible to me.
Yeah, definitely. Let me do some research and talk with some of my other districts that I worked with recently and give you some examples of how they um, figure that out in proportional for benefits to those lodging providers. So I can get that information for you guys.
I mean, and I understand at a general level about, hey, if it's
Mhm.
the lodging business owners that are collecting this assessment, that should benefit them.
Yeah.
But even the terminology I've heard us use where we say solely for their benefit,
Hmm.
well, that's also impossible. If there are more
Hmm.
people staying in rooms in Trinity County, then there are more people spending money at our restaurants, at our gas stations, at our markets, and so others will benefit. And so
Yeah.
I think some of this language is just troublesome, and I don't know how much of it has to be in there because that's the way the law is written, and
Hmm.
lawmakers often write things in strange ways, or if we're just missing something, but both of those
Yeah.
things seem incongruent to
I
me.
think to your point on that one though, and I don't know if it's where it's written or like how it's written in here, but I think it's like explaining to back to the board of like they need to do it's the benefiting the lodging. Like how do you get more heads and beds? That first benefits lodging. And then maybe
First
it's a
benefit.
sub thing. Maybe it's yes,
Yeah.
then you are benefiting other areas, but
Yeah.
that's like priority one for
Yeah.
the and that's probably more on the board of like how are they gonna benefit.
And that makes sense, where we wouldn't be setting it up to say that the lodging business owners controlling that funding would say, oh, well, we want to do something that helps the restaurants. they should be
Yeah,
saying,
they
what,
should be
we're gonna
saying
do
what's
stuff
gonna
that helps
help
us.
Yeah.
And,
Mhm.
and add-on benefit comes to other parties in the county.
And we, just to add on, Leah's right and Rick, you're right, there is spillover benefit that does happen. But if, in the sense, the board needs to make all their decisions to benefit those that are being assessed. So there are times that spillover benefit happens and that's can be unavoidable. But if the board and the nonprofit who's running the district does their best to only benefit those who are paying into the assessment, then there should be no problem.
Okay,
So, one last thing, section E, interest and overdue charges. I think
Mhm.
it's over, it's over the top for our county. I just,
Okay.
the 25% or 10%, and the county will be responsible for, for collecting and delinquent charges and fraud and interest, and I don't know. It just, that whole, if I'd known that, maybe I could have thought about a little bit harder about what our lines would be, with, when you're talking about South County and, areas where, the assessed lodging owners may not be in a position to pay the percentage. I mean, could be a full-time job.
so if I'm understanding this correctly, let's say that my lodging business owner, entity generates $100,000 a year, then I should have paid $3,000 a year. But by fraud, because this specifically says fraud, I am found to be in violation because of fraud, then I will have to pay
5%.
this 25% overdue. Well, that 25% is for past due. So if they're collecting the money and they're passing it through, then there's no problem. And if it's fraud, then it's the money that comes in for other reasons. But that 5%, that 25% would be of the 3,000. So it would say, you should have paid 3,000, you didn't, 25% of that is a quarter of the 3,000, so another $750 that you owe us because you were fraudulent. And that's what you're saying is too much?
Well, not for a business that brings in 100,000.
Well, but do the math backwards. If it's
percentage.
10,000, then it's
Yeah.
$75.
Okay.
So it's
Okay.
25% of the 3% if you did
Oh.
all the things wrong.
25% of the assessed amount, of the amount of the assessment.
Is that
I
of
right?
the
hear it. I think
asset-
there's two sides to that. Like I do see it in the county, but then also what's enough to make sure people are
Right.
paying.
Yeah, I mean, if it was 25% of the revenues, then yeah, I would, I would be against
Oh,
it too. But if it's
Okay.
25% of just the assessment, and Katie, please weigh in if I'm misinterpreting what I'm reading here.
No, you're correct, Rick.
Okay. So do you
Mhm.
still have that concern? 'Cause
Yeah, I was having the concern that the county had a full-time job ahead of it,
Oh.
just
Try to get people.
trying to get collected.
Well, that was part of why Trent was saying that we needed 3 or 4% instead of 2% was
Right.
there is
Yeah.
going to be some effort,
Yeah.
especially since it would be brand new for a while, to get those funds collected. But yeah,
I have I have a question. Is it possible in this stage to use another mechanism other than the county to collect?
Oh, Rick, you can go.
I was gonna say, Katie, you can weigh in. I mean, I'm sure that we could say that we want to use some other one, but then we'd have to go out and research and find
Mhm.
someone and say, are you gonna do it for less than 4%?
No, exactly what Rick was saying. Usually, in almost, I would say, 95% of cases, the assessment is collected by the jurisdiction that is either the board of supervisor or the city council. They would be, the county or the city would be collecting that.
Well, I guess, Katie, given that if there's 5% that don't, can you check your records and indicate who else, what counties or jurisdictions, I should say, have used somebody other than the local government to collect those funds? And to the extent you're able to tell us that, how much
Mhm.
are they paying for that service.
Yeah, I can do some research and have that ready for next time. I do know that most of the cases that they're not using the local jurisdiction, usually it's only collecting for the short-term rentals. So the county or the city is still collecting from the lodging providers, but use a different mechanism just for short-term rentals. I haven't heard of an entire district using a different way to collect besides jurisdiction, but I can research and talk to my other project managers and see if they have any other ideas too, if any
Okay.
other destinations do that too.
And Katie, were you able to get any more email address contacts for lodging owners? I know that the list isn't complete and that
Mhm.
everyone has been email contacted that we have the email address of.
Mhm. I reached out to Terry after our last meeting, and she hasn't responded to me. So I will follow up with her and see if I can get any more information.
Thank you.
Yeah. Any other questions regarding the management district plan or any changes?
Let's see.
I have some questions, actually. So so for the budget, the first year it can't be adjusted, but the first year you're collecting money, there's not any money to spend.
Well,
There
it
won't
could be,
a
yeah.
ton, but
Is
I
no,
mean,
it's
if you
not- I
start,
mean, yeah,
if you
you're
start
starting.
paying in January, you would have some to spend in February.
Yeah, it's not quarterly, it's twice a year collected. How's it written? Is it quarterly? I know we covered it last
We
meeting.
at least,
recently.
we at least collect TOT quarterly because I
Yeah.
see. quarterly
Okay, so
statements.
it is collected
Quarterly.
Okay, so
Mhm.
then, so the 15% adjustment in the budget, can that, in this draft form, because we're in draft form now, so as
Mhm.
far as I understand, we can make any changes,
We could walk out of this room with every number on that chart being different.
right, but can 15% change? Or is that
Yeah,
tied to the law?
we can change the amount of the 15%.
Yeah,
I've seen
the
even
adj-
up to
the
30%.
adjustability.
Yeah, so
Mhm,
like
yeah.
15%, so like sales and marketing, if it's 15% of that could go to either destination attraction, or you could put more into reserves. So you
Yeah.
had-
But I'm sorry,
The
I'm-
15% flexibility is
Can
what
that
I
be
mean.
changed?
Yeah,
Can-
to a
so
different number.
Saying to make it
Is the 15% only in the second year a state required thing, or
That
is
doesn't
that
matter.
how we've written our document?
That's how it's written in the document. That's
Okay.
typically what we recommend
Okay.
for districts, but we've seen even people do 20%, even up to 30%. So we can change the amount of reallocation, whatever number you guys think is best.
So
we
more or
can
less,
change it.
sorry.
That's okay.
More or less, any number is,
Mhm.
we're all in draft form here. So this is a draft that we're waiting for feedback on, so we can make adjustments, so the assessed businesses will want to pass it. That's the goal.
Mhm.
And I
Yes.
guess
Great.
along that same lines, then, are we also the ones that have defined that can't be changed in the first year, or that's a state requirement?
That I believe is a state requirement here. The amount can be changed by you guys, or if the lodging providers want a higher percentage of reallocation, but the changes after the first year are written into the law.
And then if there's any money unspent, what happens at the end of the year?
Typically you can put that into a different budget category, or it goes into your reserves.
Okay.
Yeah.
And is there like how do you make a nonprofit board allocate all the money? It's like,
the budget.
they have to spend it. Is there a mechanism where they have to spend it?
I believe I'm not sure if there's a mechanism that they have to spend it. But typically we see all destinations spend up to whatever they're allocating each category
Right.
towards, yeah.
Can you check on that for us?
But
If
not
there's a
always-
mechanism.
But not
Yeah.
always in the first year, because it sounded like Siskiyou took
Yeah.
them 2 years
Give them a while to get together.
to start spending.
And then after 5 years, I'm curious, after 5 years, if they say they don't renew, what happens to that
Mhm.
money that's unspent?
I believe it's returned back to the hotel owners.
Okay, can we get
Yeah.
that clarified?
Mhm.
And then
Yes.
it's been brought up and I don't know, I think I understand this. The $30,000 that was paid by the county
Mhm,
to the Civitas, to your firm,
mhm.
does that have to be repaid from the assessment
No,
that's collected in the first year?
no, it's not written into our plan.
Is the law doesn't require it?
No.
Okay.
Mhm.
And you're sorry, your question again is what?
If the $30,000 that the county spent out of pocket if it has to be repaid to the county.
Oh, no. Absolutely does not.
Mhm.
There is nothing in these agreements or our agreement with Civitas or anything else that says the money is supposed to come back to the county.
It's almost like it's a gift.
Almost like
It's a
it
gift.
is. It
Yeah.
is. I
Feels
can
like
tell
a
you-
gift.
I can tell you as the
It
person
doesn't
who,
feel-
who pushed this for board discussion, to me, I see it as an investment
Right.
in the county and not one that has to be repaid.
One of the concerns that was brought up in my
District.
it, no, in my discussion, was that like, how is this even going to work? Like, as if I have time to be on the board, not me specifically, the person I was speaking to. And I was like, well, it's up to the nonprofit, and I would imagine that they will hire someone or a consultant, like Siskiyou. I use Siskiyou as a easy, great prime example. And I don't know. And then who's on the board? So we need to get down to the brass tacks of who is on the board, if there's any chance of getting this passed. And then I have other stuff, but I don't think now's the time. It's about ad hoc meetings and stuff.
So
Okay.
just to be
Invitation.
clear,
Mm.
the sales and marketing could be 70% of the pie chart.
Yeah.
Anything's adjustable. This is all
Everything's
just
adjustable. Okay.
draft.
This is what came from the ad hoc committee's discussion that the advisory board adopted to put out there for discussion purposes with the lodging business owners. So if the lodging business owners were coming back and saying, we don't like this at all, we wanted sales and marketing to be 80%, and we want 10% in each of the other categories, or whatever, do the math. This can be anything we want up to the point that we say we're locking it down for the petition.
Mhm.
So this was just what the people involved thought. And I don't know that I've heard, I mean, we've heard here that there is in public comment that this is too much money in certain categories or whatever.
Mhm.
And we've heard that we shouldn't have ever come up with these numbers before talking to somebody, but whether you ask people for feedback and change it, or you ask them before you put numbers on a piece of paper, doesn't matter to me. There's still the asking, what do you want it to be? And have you received any feedback that tells you these numbers should change in your outreach?
I have received no specific feedback
Okay.
specifically.
With the numbers, I just kind of got like collection times and stuff. That's really people ask. Because I think some people were like confused in administration, but then once you explain that it could be a staff or it could be rent fees, it could be legal fees, if something
Mhm.
like that is broad. The other categories, no.
And also,
anything.
I don't know would you want to talk about how the time spent goes out of the other category? Like if they did hire somebody?
Oh, yeah. So like it is written in there. If you were to have someone, and it could be whoever's time, it doesn't mean it's a full-time person, it doesn't mean whoever's time. It is written like, because it has the director of sales or someone or marketing. So it's like if someone spends time in those categories, it can come out of part of that budget too. So it's not just the admin
Right.
area.
Yeah. It's
Okay.
basically the administration of any of those things.
Yeah.
If it was for signs and somebody had to administer going out and find a sign company and working on design and working on all that kind of stuff, and they were going to charge for that versus volunteering their time, then they could charge that administration fee there.
Yeah.
Right? So again, I think as we do our polling, it's
Wait.
important to find out from people. If they think it should be different, then we absolutely want to make it different, but we just needed to give them a starting point.
To clarify that, so say there's someone hired, their, administration, some of their salary is paid out of the administration 20%. But if they're working on sales and marketing, then those hours can be billed out of the 50%
Katie?
part of
Correct.
the budget. Correct.
Correct. Yeah.
Thank you.
Mhm.
Because 40,000, it's 20%, it's not a hard $40,000, it's a percentage of a projection. So
Mhm.
we don't really know. And it doesn't seem like a lot, but it isn't the full salary necessarily.
Mhm.
Okay, if that, I think I understand that now.
Yeah,
Thank
you're
you.
correct.
Okay, is there anything else about the plan that you've received feedback on that you want to share here so that we can make any adjustments? Okay, so what I want to be clear about here is that in our last meeting, we said we were going to adjust the timeline. And instead of already moving into the petition stage, we felt like we needed more time for this outreach. And we said mid-June would be our starting date, which means the next time we meet, we should already be in petition stage, which we won't be. But at that point, we should be in a place where we're either saying, you know what, this isn't going to work, let's call it quits, or we think we've got enough support, let's lock things down and start the petition.
Is there another opportunity for public comment?
There will be here in a minute, yeah.
Okay.
So I just want to be real clear because, we are using up money as we go. That investment on the county's part is going away a little bit each month. And we've already pushed our timeline out a little bit. And I think if we keep pushing it, then that means we have to come up with more money. And so we need to be at a point at the next meeting where we're saying go or no go.
Right.
Agreed.
I would like to have it as public as this is, which hopefully we can get it more public than just this meeting. I would like the ad hoc committee to meet with lodgers and people with questions and concerns one-on-one. So we can have the back and forth. So it's not just limited to public comment. And hopefully we can get more email addresses and contact information by then. I know that that's been a thing. So,
Mhm.
yeah. I guess we have to plan all that in our ad hoc meeting. We can't do that right now.
And I mean, you guys have had a webinar, as I understand it, you've had some in-person open meetings.
We had an open house, but I think one
Yep.
fellow
No,
showed
they-
up to it.
That was emailed out to everyone and that was shared
Yeah.
in
Okay.
multiple areas.
Is that just one then you've had or two open?
We just had the one open house, so.
And
if
one
we wanna schedule
webinar.
Another one, we can.
So everybody that we had an email for was invited?
Everyone that has an email was invited.
Okay,
Yeah,
thank you.
yeah.
Okay, but you're suggesting for more. Yeah, I agree. I mean, this is kind of our
Yeah.
2-week window where we need to
I would really like,
heavy push and we either, again, we start to get enough support that we
Yeah.
say it's worth going forward at $6,000 a month, or we
Yeah.
say, no, we gave it a shot and there isn't enough interest.
I would really like to be able to get local input and if it really is useful or not, and if it's worth extending to know, the whole point is to get your input so we can get this passed. There's, yeah, that's the
Okay.
point.
So,
Yes.
if I just, let's see. So again, with the petition drive, if they sign it and return it, and we get 50% of the, those with weighted value, it passes. If they don't sign it and return it, they're just subject to,
It's a no.
yeah, it's a no.
Mhm.
But it doesn't, the no's,
The no is a no.
okay,
The no return
No
So
return.
right now, in a sense, by people not being interested, they're saying no? By not reaching out or finding out more, or,
Yeah, because we have to have a yes. We have to have.
okay. So we need more yeses, yeah. We need more people on board. And the best way to do that would be to do something like more than email, maybe? Because email isn't getting or generating the interest in
Yeah,
the
I've made,
webinar or
we have
the-
some phone numbers. I've made some
Okay.
calls. Have you made
Okay.
it? Yeah. It's
Well,
I
I
haven't
think
made a lot of calls because, yeah,
time.
that and distance, I guess, in sense of.
yeah, I think this is really the time to pull out all the stops. So if you don't have the bandwidth to make all these outreach on your own, then if you can try to get other people that you know that would think that this is a good idea to help make those calls or something. I mean, you can, all of these businesses, I assume have some way that they're marketing their lodging. And so through that channel, we should be able to find additional contact information. If it's not already on the list provided by Terry McBrayer, it doesn't mean that we can't find that information. But if you need help, from friends, neighbors, other business owners that might be interested and feel like this would benefit them, then this is the time. But, you know, we are months into this at this point. And so if we, frankly, if we can't demonstrate some momentum at the next meeting, we just need to say it's not gonna work.
Mm-hmm.
And so I hope that, we will make the most of the time that we have left.
Mm-hmm.
Okay, other questions on that? Otherwise, we'll go to public comment about the management district plan.
Use
Okay, public comment.
the. Mhm.
Being part of the visitor center and the advertising of the Lewiston Peddlers Fair, we have helped a lot of people find places to park their RVs, and they will be paying TOT funds. So advertising for events and stuff is very important for bed and breakfasts and whatever, you know. So that's the thing you need to push.
About the advertising, is that what you're saying? Okay.
Well. kinda
Okay.
fast.
It was less than 30 seconds. First. Any other public comment about the management district plan?
At this point, the management district plan would be complete. Now the 30,000, you're gonna start paying the 6. One would think, I've been to a couple meetings, I missed the last one, I didn't know you guys were gonna have it, but that's not. But you're looking at, you'd made the statement, Rick, that the TOT generates 300,000 a year, and so my calculation here, if they're gonna raise the county collection to 4%, and once we get going, I'm sure that we'd be raising 300,000 like the TOT, because they both would be at 5% each. What? Hello?
Oh, go ahead.
You're shaking your head. The first year is 3%. The second, third, fourth, and fifth year is 5%.
But go ahead with your public comment.
To the 5%. That's 300,000. Then the county would be collecting 12,000. So this number went from 4,000 to 12,000. And you're not even sure that 4% will cover the cost of collection. So sending this out to the owners association, stakeholders, whatever you're going to call the assessed people, sending this out, it's not complete. And even the board up here, after all these months, didn't know that you can't change this in the first year. You can't change this. So you're going to have to change once you find out how much Terry's going to charge to do the collections of these. You're assuming it's 4%. They haven't given you a hard number yet. I'm assuming. I know you're not going to answer me. Everybody's just kind of. But this not being complete as you're sending it out for us to look at, to make determination, and then you're going to send a petition. At what point are you going to, is this pie chart. And of course, you guys are making these decisions. That's the biggest complaint that I've gotten from the other lodging owners. Why aren't we being included? Why aren't we on the board? Why all of a sudden it's going to come down to the last minute and be $6,000 a month more? So now we've got, either you're going to put the brakes on, or you're going to shame these people. Well, it's going to be another $6,000 if you guys can't make up your mind. Well, this is an incomplete document. How can we make an educated decision on something that's not complete? And you don't even know the answer. And then you're going to put it out there, and then you're going to say, well, if you don't make a decision here pretty quick, it's going to be $6,000 more. We've already spent $30,000 of public funds on creating this, when we should have been, by law, if you want to talk about law, we should have been the people that petitioned prior to you guys doing this or anything spent. I don't know if any of you have actually sat down and read the law, but it clearly states we're the people that are supposed to get the funds together. We're the people that are supposed to get the petition and get 50%. That's fine.
Katie, can you just make a comment about, this is the time that I've heard reference to, the law says that the lodging business owners are the ones that should drive a petition before you hire someone to help you define the program. And that, of course, is not my understanding at all of the law, and you guys are the kind of experts on the law. Can you clarify?
No, Rick, you're completely correct. There is nothing in the law where we have to start with the lodging owners and we have to petition them first. That is part of the process. And in order to petition, we do need a management district plan to outline the district parameters, because how would the lodging providers know what they're voting on if a plan isn't in place before we go into petition? So we can't move forward unless we get that 50% for the petition drive. So there is that point where the lodging providers will have a decision. And that's why we're doing our outreach now, to get feedback so we can make any of those choices and change anything that's written in the plan.
Thanks. And I think you
Yeah.
make an important point there. The petition is only valid if it is based on documents like what we're going over here that
Mhm,
fully lay out everything that we're discussing.
mhm,
And so you could do a petition beforehand, but it's of no value because you'd have to repetition once you put all these things in place. And what we have
Correct.
been doing is putting all these things in place as a proposal
Mhm.
and bringing it to the lodging business owners through workshops, webinars, emails, open discussions, these meetings being open, to get feedback so that we could then lock down all of this and go to petition. And
Mhm.
that is the point at which we would identify who are the proposed slate of board members. What is the amount of that's going to be in the end going to be allocated to the administration for collecting of the services? What is the amount that's going to go towards advertising versus events versus administration, all those kinds of things.
Mhm.
So the fact that it's not locked down right now, in my view, is fine because we're just trying to put something out there to get feedback on. And when it would come to petition, if it comes to petition, then it would absolutely be locked down.
Mhm.
And that's what
Right.
we're heading towards, is we're heading towards, at the next meeting, we need to be locking these things down and saying that we're moving to petition, or we're saying that the outreach that we have had that has been going on for now, weeks, is either is giving us an indication that we should continue to move forward, or it isn't. And then we would, if it is, we'd lock it down and move on. If it isn't, then we leave it as it is. Okay. The next item is to approve the May 19 minutes. Those are included. Those are from my notes from the last meeting. So we could have a motion and a second for approving the minutes if you've had a chance to look at them.
I move to approve the minutes from, I don't know the date off the top of my head, from the last meeting.
May
of
19th.
May 19th.
I'll second it. I've read them.
Okay. Okay, motion by Dana and second by Dana. All in favor?
Aye.
And no opposed. Okay. Next meeting date, time, location, agenda. So the next 2 weeks from now would be the 16th, which is what's on my calendar. Do we have any concerns about the 16th?
I won't be available, but no concern other than that.
Anybody else not be able to?
Was there some discussion about a 2 PM meeting at one juncture and then it was changed back to 3:30?
Not that I'm aware of.
Okay, so yeah, that is going nowhere.
I mean,
Okay.
we can talk about whatever we want to talk about in terms of the timing of the next meeting, but I don't remember discussion
Okay,
about 2
okay.
o'clock.
Great. 16th is fine.
Okay,
I'm available.
okay. Katie, perhaps you can poll the rest of the group after this meeting and just make sure
Mhm.
that we have enough people to meet quorum. If Dana Hauser's not going to be here, then we'd be down to 3 of us. So we would need at least one other one to be there. And
Mhm.
it would be better to have as many as possible if we're at a go, no go decision point.
Mhm. Okay, yeah, I will email the whole group after this.
Okay.
Mhm.
And Dana, just a question to you. If we know we have had discussions before about changing dates and times, so we don't have everybody here to ask about other times, but is there other?
Wednesday, the 18th would work for me. I'll be out of town for my niece's graduation. So Wednesday I would be back. Or
Would
later.
would the Wednesday or later that week work for others? Because we could have Katie just do a doodle poll with this time
That'd be
on
fine.
every day of the week and see where we end up with the most people.
Yeah, I think the only day, that Tuesday, I just can't do that Tuesday.
The Tuesday.
I wouldn't
Okay.
be able to do the Tuesday either.
Okay, so Katie, maybe what you could
Mhm.
do is poll people for the current established time, which would be Monday, and
Mhm.
then Wednesday and Thursday, and just
Okay.
see if, where do we get the most people?
Mhm. And still at that 3:30 time?
Yeah.
Better for me, yeah.
Okay,
Okay,
perfect. I can do that. I can send that out tomorrow morning, actually. I'll send it to the group.
okay, we'll poll advisory board members regarding the best date that week.
Mhm.
Okay. All right. Well, thank you all. And with that, I'll adjourn the meeting. If some of you want to stay around and talk with members of the public, it's up to you.
Okay.
Thanks, Katie.
Thanks, Katie.
Thanks, Rick.
Thanks, Katie.
Bye-bye.